Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the session today. We have with us Rehan Yar Khan, who is the managing partner of Orios Venture Partners. So, Rehan, to begin with, I think you have a few. We already have a few questions which we've received. I think in the beginning we can just take up with that, along with a brief introduction of yourself, and then in case we get more questions, we can take that up later. So, over to you,
Okay,
Rehan.
okay, sounds good. Thanks, Diksha. Uh, Hi, everybody. I'm Rehan Yar Khan, managing partner of Orios Venture Partners. We are an early stage fund investing in technology companies in India. There are three of us who are managing partners and one VP, and all four of us lead investments. The way we like to work with our companies is very closely. So after we invest, we spend a lot of time with our companies. At any given time, any any partner is handling not more than 4 or 5 companies at a time. So our companies have a tremendous use of our time, and we spend a lot of time, and that helps us build these companies. We've been doing this for a long time now. We've been doing this since 2008, right? And first we did it as individual investors, and then from 2013 as a fund. Some of our well-known companies that have come out of our investments are Ola, where again, we were first investors, pre-revenue. Dhruva, which is a software backup company, now does over $100 million in annual recurring revenue. Again, we were pre-revenue investors. We have Box8, if any of you have used them for meal services. We have Fab Alley. We have Farm Easy, which does over 50,000 orders per day. We have Country Delight, which is serving hundreds and thousands of homes per day for milk. We have Go Mechanic, and many companies. We invest in fintech, we invest in edutech, we invest in media, gaming, all kinds of things, right? So that's what we do. So happy to take any questions. We are, of course, in very, very unusual times. We have, the situation where we have been under lockdown, and we are slowly coming out of lockdown. But I think a lot of questions remain as to what will happen once we come out of lockdown. Will the infection spread again? And if it does spread again, then is there a chance that we will go into a second lockdown, right? So there are a lot of these issues and challenges which are coming up. So I think there's a lot to think about for investors. There's a lot to think about for entrepreneurs about what the next 2 years are going to look like. We've certainly done a lot of thinking at the firm about this period, about where to invest, how to work with our companies, how to navigate through this, and even how to thrive through this, right? So before I get into that, I'll just give you a little overview of our thinking. So what we think is that because there could be lockdown, re-lockdown, or there could be some kind of controlled business activity going forward, we think things which are purely offline are going to be very heavily affected, right? So we think that the following sectors: one, which is online-only companies, which is like media, edutech, gaming, those kind of companies. Those will do very well. We think online to offline businesses where you order online and you get your delivery offline, we think those will do well. We think that anything to do with essentials will do well. Anything to do with medical will do well, right? So these are the areas we think people should focus on. Also, software will do well. New things like work from home will do well. And also keeping out for new trends. Like I saw today that Maharashtra is legalizing alcohol delivery at home. I guess if this goes on for some time, that could become mainstream. So certainly the environment has shifted, right? And so one has to be aware of that and plan accordingly. So happy to get into any questions now. I We received a lot of questions, right? Let me get into some of them. Uh, we have Aditya Avasthi has asked, what are the key features that you look for in a startup while funding it, and how can startup founders make a perfect pitch? Um, I think while this is a standard question, I'll try to answer this question in context of the times that we are in currently. Um, so one of the things that VCs will always look for is a high quality team, because high quality team is required to execute whatever idea people have, right? In these times, I think in addition to the usual criteria of large market, low competition, unique idea, opportunity to become profitable and build a large company, those are the usual, right? I think people will look at whether your company or your idea can grow in these times, right? So if you are something to do with travel and tourism, for example, there may be a question mark around whether you can grow in these times, right? That is something one has to keep in mind. Like I said, the 4 or 5 sectors which I outlined earlier, if you are anything to do with online to offline, essentials, medical, work from home, software as a service, those kind of businesses are likely to do very well going forward. So I hope that answers your question, Aditya, and for other people as well. Um, the next question I'll pick up is from Bipul Vaibhav. He's asking, how should enterprise SaaS startups act in this pandemic? The new sales are unlikely to happen. So what should be the role of a CEO to act in the crisis? Um, you're right, Bipul. There are many SaaS companies which are going to be affected. Um, but I also think that there are a couple of opportunities over here. As we have just discussed, there are a few sectors like online only, online to offline, and essentials. These kind of sectors are likely to grow, they're likely to thrive. So your SaaS should ideally be focused on those sectors, because that's where the demand will continue to come. And also, this is a great time to build your inside sales process. Inside sales means the sales that you do without leaving your office, where you have your team calling up people, doing webinars, Zoom calls, and educating people. I think the big opportunity here is that the availability of people is going to be very high for the next for the next 1 year. People won't be moving around as much, so you will be able to get them more easily. So that is certainly something you can use to utilize, right, and get your sales going. You'll have to be careful to stay away from sectors which are not likely to see demand. Um, Next question. Hey, and if you have any more questions, can you please start putting them up, right? And we'll try to answer them while our live is going on. Currently, I'm answering the questions that we received from prior to this, right? Okay. So the next one is around the healthcare space. The question that we are getting is that how do you think the health Aman Bandula is asking, how do you think the healthcare industry in India will evolve after this? Besides telemedicine, online pharmacy marketplace, what do you think can be a growing market in healthcare in the future? So currently, as you know, what has happened is that hospitals have focused only on COVID treatments, but that certainly can't last, right? People have to have surgeries and get treated in hospitals. So that is all going to come back in a couple of months. IVF and cosmetics and even electives is going to come back. So I think one of the sectors which is going to continue to boom will be this will be the healthcare space. It has been doing very well. Um, Certainly, there are increased opportunities in telemedicine. Telemedicine is something which should have arrived in India a long time ago because density of doctors anyway is limited in the country, right? So that should have arrived, and in-person appointments should have been supplemented by telemedicine. I certainly think that that is going to get that is now going to get accelerated with the whole work from home and people generally being afraid of going out and meeting, going to doctors and traveling in public, right? There's a tremendous opportunity there to do something new in healthcare. Online pharmacies have been booming. We've been part of One Farm Easy, doing extremely well. Right. Home diagnostics and there could be multiple opportunities in healthcare as well. Um, the next question is from Swaminathan Gopal. Swaminathan asks, work from home has the potential to become the new normal even post-COVID. What are some of the opportunities, disruptions in the space, which will become a way of life in the coming decade? Well, I'm not a prophet, and I can't see out into the coming decade, but some of the trends we are currently seeing and the opportunities, I mean, you all know that webinars like these have become very popular. You know that video calls have become very popular. Zoom is booming. Its stock price has gone through the roof as a result. Google, Microsoft, everybody's trying to play catch up, and they've launched products in there. Um, I think software that allows people to do more things from home or to work remotely in teams. That is gonna grow. I think I've been reading a lot of magazines at home, and they've been all coming to me in PDF format. Right, so I think content is going to evolve. Right, for people to just work to get that content off their computer, and I think people will. There could be many more tools around improving infrastructure at home. For example, I came across a company recently which does $100 million of annual sales just in Hong Kong, improving Wi-Fi connections and home computing, right? Because people need that working from home, so there could be opportunities around that. Uh, I think if there's an increased work from home, there will also be a scale down in the requirement for offices, right? So that could certainly be a trend that we see. Uh, Maybe people may not have permanent offices, or they'll have a certain limited amount of staff. TCS, for example, has announced that by 2025 they're only going to have 25% of their staff coming into office at any given time, and 75% will work from home, right? Um, so yeah, these are some of the kind of trends we're going to see from work from home. Work from home also includes study from home. So I think edutech is going to play a very large role with kids studying from home, right? So these are some of the trends, the at home trends that we're going to see going forward. Um, Ankit Podar, moving on to the next question, is asking, cash is the king now. How do we curtail it? What is the Will it be right to propose a salary cut or defer for some of high-paid employees? If so, how do we tackle the situation of convincing everyone? Uh, you're absolutely right, Ankit. Cash is extremely important right now because one doesn't know what the funding environment is going to be like. My guess is that it's going to be much lower than it was earlier, simply because there's more uncertainty out there. Right? And especially if you are in sectors which are going to take time to come back, offline retail, travel, tourism, you're going to have to survive to get to that end of the tunnel when the market resumes, right? The reason funding is low is because market activity is low. So you're going to have to survive till your market comes back. Um, and I think you'll have to come together as a team. At least what we've been telling all our companies is, and our companies have by and large avoided layoffs. So what we've been telling our companies is work with your teams to get a buy-in to reduce salaries, work with your landlords to become to reduce their rent as well, or to become profit share partners, and do it in a manner where you guys do it together versus the top team taking a position and just letting everybody know that, hey, you're fired or your salaries are reduced. I think these are times when you have to make a collective effort. You have to get a lot of people's buy-in. Um, and you have to lead by example, right? All the higher paid people have to take the largest cut, the lower paid people have to take lesser cuts. One of the things many of our companies did was they said that, hey, listen, while we are taking this salary cut, what we're going to do is we're going to link this to our numbers coming back. So if we see in FY21 our numbers come back and we are able to reach a certain threshold of numbers, then that amount that we had cut in salary, we will pay that amount back, right? So there's an opportunity for people to earn that back. So that helps improve people's motivation quotient. So you could certainly try that. So two things, right? Get everybody's buy-in by building the plan together, and do it in such a way that people continue to remain motivated, and lead by example with the highest paid people taking the maximum cuts, right? Um, so let's move down from that. Let's move on to something in finance and fintech. Devang Rao is asking, how will the lockdown affect the industries business which are credit based? Devang, what we are seeing is that collections have been very heavily hit, right, because of lockdown. Collection agents haven't been able to go out and collect from people. So that is certainly something which is going to take some time to come back. Um, uh, in terms of what are we seeing in lending, we are seeing that people who lend to the weakest sections of society, those lenders are facing the greatest risk of default because the weakest sections of society have been the most hit. Um, Next, we are seeing people who have lent to businesses, especially small businesses. They are fairly hit because small businesses have no revenues, right? And they have no reserves during this period, and they are struggling to pay back monies to their lenders and even to pay interest. We've seen large groups, Future Group, for example, we've seen their share price tank because it's a company which has a fair amount of leverage, and then the business has largely been shut, right? Unfortunately, being as part of offline retail, so there's been a lot of media around, the lenders trying to encash various guarantees. So certainly, business credit has been heavily affected. Next comes subprime credit, which is people which are not absolutely the weaker sections of society, but are not the highest sections of society. And I think that has also been hit, not as much as people who have been lending to the weaker sections of society. And then the least hit, what we've seen is people who are lending to prime creditors. These are basically wealthy people. Maybe they have a loan on their Mercedes or on their Apple Mac, and they have been fairly good at paying back, and there have been lesser defaults in there. So that is what we are seeing in the current environment. Going forward, this is likely to continue. I think there will be a lot of bias that will come in based on industry. People which are in industries which are likely not to operate going forward are going to be deemed as very risky, and rightly so. and industries which are likely to operate will be deemed as less risky, right? So that's how I think credit will happen. Of course, all this will come back. Business will resume in 1 year. There will be a vaccine, and right, and all this will come back. I think it's really the next 12 months which are going to be affected, right? Um, so, are there any questions that we can have which are currently being posted? If I can see those questions, then I'll be happy to answer them. Um, do we have such questions? Great. Okay, we've got one from Vijaya. What are the future of virtual and augmented reality in education, healthcare, and defense? Um, well, I'm going to try and answer this question from a COVID perspective, right? So while virtual reality is certainly a growing trend, I think anything which has to do with virtual work, right, is going to be an accelerating trend. And I think there could be some great innovations that come in the whole work from home area, education area, right? Because people are at home, where virtual classrooms and virtual offices are getting more and more integrated. I'm already seeing software where there is more virtualization in their features, right? So like for example, I came across this Indian company which is doing meetings, right? Very similar to this particular meeting software uh, or Zoom. But what they have in there is that they actually have virtual meeting rooms that you can go and you can take a seat in. So I thought that was very interesting. So I think all of that is going to do very well in this period. Uh, okay, next question is from Vineet. What are the possibilities for hyperlocal content creator platforms to get funded by investors? Um, so I think again, answering from the COVID period and the next 12 months. So hyperlocal content is a lot about or has been a lot about offline content. Has been a lot about covering offline spaces. I certainly think that while hyperlocal will continue, I think the hyperlocal content creators will have to very smartly focus on businesses which are continuing to operate. So a lot of hyperlocal online businesses, home delivery businesses. I think they'll have to cover that. And I think if they can build a convincing story around that, and they can demonstrate a lot of growth, and they can show some form of monetization. Now, remember, one of the growing trends we are seeing is that platforms which are advertising supported, they're harder to monetize because you just have to build such large scale in there, versus platforms which are transactional in nature. They are getting a lot more funding support simply because they can bring in revenues at lower scale. So I think all kinds of content creators, and that includes hyperlocal creators, I think they will have to think through transactional monetization strategies versus advertising monetization strategies. Next question is from Paul. How about residential IoT home automation product would do post lockdown? Well, I mean, I can't really think of what those products will be. Residential IoT products. If I'm going to be at home, I don't know how much I need residential IoT products. But like I said, if there's any product which has a market for it, and we as VCs can't always project what that market will be, right? Entrepreneurs always surprising us with great ideas. I think if you can find a market for it and wide adoption, then we can certainly be investable. Okay, next question. Kiran Babu, you're asking what is the best thing in this given time a startup working on SaaS to do to keep the curve on, even for product-based company. as investment will affect development in this time? Well, like I said earlier, I think, well, your development could certainly continue. Coders can work from home and they can keep developing the product. I think there will be certain sectors that will see more demand for SaaS products, like anything to do with essentials, medical, anything to do with e-commerce analytics, online sales analytics, etc. Software, which helps teams work remotely. Um, so all that will do well. So you can certainly, Kiran, you can certainly focus your SaaS company on that, and you should hopefully get sales in there. Next question, Prasad is asking, what are your thoughts on home furnishings, home furniture furnishings? Would do post-COVID lockdown? Would an organized segment vanish, or shift expected towards organized segment? I certainly think that all kinds of retailers, right, going forward, will have to have some kind of a home delivery method now, right, and virtual catalogs. I had actually tweeted this yesterday, where I had said that all kinds of businesses, that e-commerce will flourish, right? A lot of people misunderstood that tweet, thinking that it is only e-commerce companies, current e-commerce companies, which will flourish. Actually, what is going to happen going forward is that all kinds of retailers will have to have some kind of an online platform, or in order to help people shop, right? Because people will be shy of visiting shops. They may be scared, they may not want to go out, there may be restrictions, semi-curfew, whatever else may be in place. So I think while the trend of shopping from home, or shopping from your computer, or shopping from your phone was a growing trend, I think that trend is going to accelerate. I think all retailers, small, medium, and large, need to embrace this. You can't just exist in your offline avatar and not have an online avatar. Okay, next question is from Fahad. Fahad is asking, what do you think shared services like Bounce, Yulu, etc., people getting more conscious about sharing as before COVID? Um, well, it's an interesting question. On one side, you are going to have people, less likely to move out because they may be afraid or whatever it is. But on the other side, I think people may want to use services where they're exclusively using them, and not and not like a bus where there are many people on a bus or many people on a train. So things like Bounce, where I can rent my own motorcycle, or Yulu, where I can rent my own cycle, or Ola, where I can be the only person in a cab. They may see higher adoption, but we'll have to see. Nothing is known. We'll have to see how people behave. Um, but I certainly think these are growing trends. They're important trends. They will there will be a market for it. I think there are smart entrepreneurs that will find a way to develop a market for their products and services. Okay, we have our next question now from Ashu. Uh, what do you think about co-working spaces post-COVID times? Uh, yeah, Ashu, interesting question. I think the larger trend that we are seeing here is that there will be a lot more work from home, right? So demand for office space in general is likely to drop. If demand for office space in general is likely to drop, then co-working spaces, being a part of commercial office space, may see a downward drop in demand. Next question. What challenges would cybersecurity startups face, and what are the opportunities for cybersecurity startups? Uh, I think there could be a lot of opportunities around the whole work from home area, right? If more people are working off home, or like we observed earlier, a lot more retailers need to go online, and they are going online. Um, so I think providing them security As the world becomes more and more cyber, the need for cybersecurity is going to go up, right? Essentially, so the larger trend is increased cyberization of the world, work from home, work remotely, and shop from home, education from home, those kind of things. So certainly cyberization is going up, so thus cybersecurity opportunities are going to go up as well. Can small startups end with Geo and WhatsApp coming together? Well, first of all, Shankar, we'll have to see if we'll have to see how successful WhatsApp and Geo is, right? WhatsApp or Geo have never created a retail front end yet, and if they are in any market, right? WhatsApp has not created this in any market yet. So we'll have to see how successful they are in creating a high quality retail front end. Remember, we are in times today when uh, it's not muscle, but high quality product that actually sways consumers. So startups which can deliver that will certainly have an edge. Yes, there is a threat from large companies wanting to do that, but I mean, look at the example of Zoom, right? A company which has done very well in the face of big boys, or so many other companies. So I certainly think startups will not end. They will continue to exist, and they will be important. What steps do you think? So next question, Sakshi is asking, what steps do you think producers of non-essential goods should take? Right. Um, well, I think there is going to be a slowdown in non-essentials. So I think they should certainly take steps to extend their runway, right, by having cost cuts. They should certainly find ways to sell at home by providing interfaces that people can shop at home from. Uh, and yeah, they should wait it out till the vaccine is out there and is a little bit more normal, back to the old normal. Next question, Pearl is asking, what is the scope for new Indian brands in nutraceuticals or Ayurveda immunity to enhancing beverages market? Um, well, overall, there is a scope for a lot more brands in India. If you go to supermarkets abroad, you see there's so many brands and all kinds of niches and all kinds of segments. And in India, there's so much less so, right? So I think first of all, the trend to put new brands out there is there. Uh, but I also think that traditional distribution channels, these need to get disrupted, right? So the old channel where I had distributors, and then distributors were kind of giving it to supermarkets and kirana stores, and we were kind of buying out that was anyway getting disrupted. We were seeing a lot more direct to home brands. I think that is only now going to accelerate. So if you were to do nutraceuticals, Ayurveda, immunity, or any other kind of brand, I would strongly encourage you to think through how you can be a direct to home brand, or use other channels like social selling. Right, the newer channels out there versus traditional channels. We think traditional channels were dying pre-COVID, and I think post-COVID it has only accelerated that demise. So we are all about the new channels going forward. So I would certainly encourage you to look at those new channels. Okay. Moving on, we have Pushkar Raj, and he's asking, what are startups' initial phase in sports sector? What do you think? How much time the sports sector is going to take to fully recover? Yeah, I mean, Pushkar, your guess is as good as mine. I think stadiums are certainly going to be out for some time, right? Because the areas where people can congregate and they can share, spread infection. So it may take some time. But then on the other side, Sportsmen can't be out of business for a long time, right? Just sitting at home. Virat Kohli is unfortunately just sitting at home. So I think the world will find a way in which the sports sector will bounce back. Okay, next question. Ami is asking, how do you view the premium B2C segment shaping? Should a premium brand come up with a sub brand? Um, Ami, the premium sector is, pre-COVID, post-COVID, is defined by the size of the top end of the market, right? And if you are convinced that the top end of the market is large and it's growing, then a premium brand will do well, a premium B2C brand. But if you believe that your target segment is not very large, uh, right, and there isn't going to be a much adoption of your product, then what you would want to do is look at a segment below, which is larger, because the pyramid is shaped like this. So when I move down the pyramid, the market is larger, right? So if you believe that your segment is not very large, then you certainly want to move down. So that is something you could do. Okay, next question is from Javed. Javed is asking, what will change in funding criteria? We discussed a little bit of this earlier, but to recap, we think investors will certainly be sensitive about which sectors are likely to do well going forward. That is going to be a key consideration. And if we believe that those sectors are going to flourish in the next 12 months, then there will be a focus on them. If there is belief that those sectors will not flourish in that period, so I think investors will be shy of those sectors. There will be a lot more sector bias that will come in. Earlier on, it was very secular. People are looking at all sectors, but now there will be sector bias, and people will say, "Hey, this sector will work versus other sectors, not working." Okay, moving on. Next question is from Faiz. He's asking, what approach are VC firms most likely to take towards investments in startups in the HR and recruitment space? Um, the HR and recruitment space has been seeing constant innovation, right? I mean, where you had Naukri in the beginning, which was the all-in-one for online recruitment. Then you had things like LinkedIn came in, and then there were lots of others that started coming in to sort of change the way in which people could find other people and recruit. I think a lot more has to happen in recruitments, right? In terms of interviewing, and it's not just finding people, right? I think the whole process of selecting people, the whole process of onboarding people. I think there are lots of opportunities in those spaces that will have to which are coming, which exist, and which will need to be addressed by startups going forward. So I think I'm at least looking forward to seeing a lot more action in onboarding and in interviewing people in the recruitment space. Okay, moving on. The next question we have is from Dhaval. So Dhaval is asking. My question is, how do you see the automation in restaurants, especially in QSR, like nowadays, IoT machine for Pani Puri? Um, yeah, there's a lot of talk from untouched by hand, right? Right, and I think certainly that may play a role if people are going to be sensitive about infection. But we'll have to see. Nothing is, there's no predictability around that right now. So we'll have to see how that goes. Okay. So the next question is Poonam Kashyap. Poonam is asking, can edtech startups explore an opportunity in learning management system of enterprises despite knowing that every company has its own established brick and mortar training system? Well, I certainly think like I said earlier, there's a tremendous opportunity in education virtualization, right? So you can certainly, Poonam, create areas in this area in learning system management, both for corporate schools, any sort of organization that is imparting any kind of learning, development, and training.
So, Rehan, I think we're done with the questions. We'll be happy to have a closing remark from your side. Anything which you would want to tell the audience?
Well, thanks. Those were some great questions that we received, very diverse. In closing remarks, Diksha, what I would like to say is that we think that the COVID period will last for another year. So companies which are unable to function at full strength must plan to survive or to wait it out for this next 1 year by reducing burn, reducing costs, and also innovating and focusing on areas to generate revenues. Right? We saw from some of the questions which were around what should offline businesses do. They should certainly have some kind of an online dashboard to be able to reach their customers and allow customers to see their products. So you require innovation both on the revenue generating side as well as cost cutting in order to see this period out. Number one. Number two, because this is a habit changing period, this will be a long term trend that even after things come back to normal and the infection has gone and people are vaccinated or there's a cure out there, I think people would have got habituated to this working from home or working remotely. So I think that is certainly something everybody now has to gear up from. This is a great opportunity to gear up for more and more virtualization and for optimization of your costs. So that's
Great.
what I would like to say in my closing remarks. It's been great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rehan. Thank you for joining us. It was indeed a great and very insightful session. And I would also like to thank everyone once again for joining us. And we look forward to interacting with you again. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Disha. Bye bye.
Bye bye.